I'm out here cutting pine poles this morning for a particular project I want to share with you. I intentionally chose to do this on an overcast day when there was no sun. Hadn't planned on the rain, but I hadn't wanted the cloud cover so much so that there would be fewer or no shadows to deceive our eyes, but for some health purposes that I'm going to talk to you about here momentarily. Nothing serious, nothing to be concerned with, but something to be cognitive of, I think, for all of us. But I need about a dozen of these pine poles. This is from an old brush pile from a massive white pine that almost hit our house when it fell more than a year ago. These have been drying out for a while. I need something that looks natural, unobtrusive, something that won't stand out if you were to build a lean-to shelter in the forest with no nails, no ropes, no nothing, but all naturally appearing materials that appear naturally in that specific spot. It's for a reason. I'm going to talk to you about that as well, but I need to get about 9 more of these. I'm gonna take a break before I get the rest and let you guys know what's going on here. That hill's steep and those dried pine poles are heavier than they look, especially when you're carrying them uphill. So anyway, a few months ago, I was shaving, okay? And this story's gonna sound very vain at first, and I don't mean it to, but you know, I'm almost 50 now, and over the last couple of years, I shaved less and less, not just because I don't have to and I don't want to, but because I guess the years have been more noticeable every time I look in the mirror to do so. But about a few months ago, I was shaving, and this was the end of last fall, and I started noticing like some spots here on my face. You can see them. And when I would shave, I would actually cut them and they would bleed. And I thought, well, at first I thought it was acne, maybe it's a pimple. I sliced off the top of a pimple, but pimples go away in time. These kind of stuck around, and I just kind of started not pressing as hard when I would shave there, so I wouldn't cut them. But then, it's probably been about 2 months or so ago, I started noticing what I thought were lumps right here, and that concerned me. And I live very healthy today. I eat a relatively healthy diet, other than all those Twinkies. But I don't use any sort of drugs, prescribed or not. I don't consume alcohol. I don't use tobacco products. However, in the past, I have done all of those things, and things have a way of catching up with you. You know, you can take good care of yourself today, but if you were abusing your body a decade ago, you still might have some repercussions from that. And so with that in mind, I had an upcoming, I go to my doctor at the VA about twice a year, and it's usually we just talk about whatever's going on in our lives, because when he says, do you have any concerns? I always say no, because typically I don't. But this time when I went back, and this was just a couple of days ago, when he asked, do you have any concerns? I said, yeah, I do, doc. And I've been working with this doctor for a couple of years now, and we've got a good rapport. And so I told him what I pretty much just told you. And he said, well, we can run some blood tests, certainly, but let me take a look. So he turns my head and he's looking, he's feeling around. He's saying, where are you seeing these lumps? I'm like, right here and over here, but mostly right here. So he's feeling around on this. And he goes, And he's about maybe 8 years older than me. I said, what's mean? Because coming from a doctor, you never know if that's good or bad. He puts his hands on my shoulders like this. He says, Lake, he says, I hate to be the one to break this to you. And of course, I'm thinking, oh no, it's the worst, you know, the big C. And he puts his hand right here again and he goes, these are called aging spots. And they are exacerbated. What's that word? It's a doctor word. Exacerbated, I think it is, by the sun, exposure to the sun. And he goes, these are jowls. Puts his hand back on my shoulder and he says, Lake, you're getting old. And that's all there was to it. But then he started going on and on about staying out of the sun. Hence, here's my project for today. I've caught my breath. I will be right back with the other post. Just so you'll know, what we're doing is we are building a naturally appearing lean-to. This is just the first of what I plan to be many, okay? I've been kind of down the last few days as well, almost sick, because last week I would hike 4 or 5 hours a day at freezing temperatures with very high winds, and it made me develop a low-grade fever, a sore throat. And so I've kind of been the last few days staying in the house thinking about how I'm going to take better care of myself while I'm out in these mountains. I'm not going to run myself down so much to where I get these fevers and sore throats. I am going to start spending a little less time in the sun, but I'm still going to get out here and do what I love. So, with that in mind, we will be building sun blocking and wind blocking lean-tos about every half mile or so throughout the forest on our regular rounds. Now, they're going to be made out of all natural products, stuff we find laying around, deadfalls. We will not cut down any trees, especially once we step off of my property that I own. We won't be using any nails, no ropes, no nothing. It's all going to be natural, deadfall stuff, so that if anybody walks by and they do notice it, no harm's done, because we didn't nail nails into their trees or into maybe national forest trees. We didn't cut down anything. We're not supposed to be cutting down. But the goal to keep in mind is that if they're 10 feet away or more, they won't see it if they do walk by. I'm going to show you how we're going to get that done. So I picked this particular spot because I know which way the sun shines here on my property. It comes directly through here, through this big opening in the canvas cover, or the canopy cover of the forest. So by blocking the sun here, I can come out here in the middle of the day, in the middle of summer, have shade, and be able to see into the potential Bigfoot Sasquatch forest. Now, to make sure nobody sees it or it doesn't stick out like a sore thumb when they walk by, we start by making sure that our first post doesn't come up much above. We're basically going to be making an X of our own. We're going to make sure that the post doesn't come up above the tree bend that is growing naturally, so that it doesn't stick out like a sore thumb. And then, of course, we're going to take our smaller posts and we're going to stack them up against this with the same concept in mind, to block the sun, block the shade. I'm going to go get the other post now that I've caught my breath. I'm going to show you exactly what we're talking about. You know, I was just thinking, on the way back up the hill, when I told my doctor, and he already knew about past lifestyle, but he said, you know, you're almost 50. Even if you had never done any of those things, you still spend a lot of time in the sun. He knew I have a distance running past, and I still jog these days, but think of all the years running out there in the sun. This is nuts. In college, training at the height of the heat index just to prove how tough I was. Look at me. I can run 70 miles a week when it's like 2 o'clock in the afternoon. The damage that does to your endocrine system, which controls your sweating or your body's ability to regulate it cool itself down. That's why we sweat. But again, just that sun exposure. I was a lifeguard for 5 years of my youth, and then I spent all that time in the desert in the Middle East. Spent 6 years in the Philippines on the equator. Now over there, a lot of the locals would hide from the sun during the day, but I loved it, especially in January, February, and March, because I'm used to nothing but snow those months. So, you know, if you're thinking, well, I never drugged or drank or chewed tobacco or smoked, again, just time in the sun builds up. So anyway, if you spend a lot of time outside, if you have a big property, if you like to hike in the woods like I do, having these little things thrown up here and there is not a bad idea. So with that said, I've got all my posts up here. So we started our X. So we're just gonna strange. Must have fallen. It's wet. You know, like I said, it was gonna supposed to be overcast today, but it wasn't actually supposed to rain. Maybe this would work better initially if everything were dry and wouldn't slip. But you know what? That's good that happened, because we can prepare for that now, and we know that to prevent it, our next pole might want to be perhaps one of the heaviest we have, and we stick it in the apex of that X. And this one has, look at this. This is nice. We can use this to kind of anchor this down to prevent slippage in wet weather, like that. See that? That's nice. So that will put weight and pressure on that pole, so it's not going to just slip. And then from there, we just stack the poles. Again, keeping it level with the naturally occurring. It's going to bend, the weight's going to hold it down a little bit, but what we might want to do at that point is find another shorter pole, and I had a couple shorter ones here, to just kind of maybe prop this up. Like this, and there's no harm done in just securing it in the ground a bit like that. Now, who notices the biggest problem though? I already caught it. Did you catch it? We're trying to stay congruent with everything around us, yet this heavy pole that I used as an anchor extends out much further than everything around it grows naturally. So that could stick out as a beacon to anyone or anything. Say, hey, wait a minute, that wasn't there last time I came through here. So I left my saw down there wrapped up in my jacket. I'm gonna go get that. The rain has stopped, but it was raining when I was carrying the poles up. And it's actually getting warm carrying all this. It's been unseasonably warm this winter here in Virginia, Central Virginia. So I don't need to worry about my saw not getting wet because the rain stopped. So I'm gonna go grab that. I'll take this off. Come back up. And I'm gonna saw this off so that that doesn't stick out, because that doesn't appear natural. So I wrap my saw up, keep it dry, keep it from rusting. I got this at a yard sale for $2. Doesn't mean I shouldn't be taking care of it though. Because you know what? If it gets all rusted and I have to replace it, I might not be able to find another one for $2. So we're gonna come over here and we're gonna saw off the excess here. Well, that's great. It looked like a couple of them fell when I did that. This fell. Oh my gosh, how this... All right, so here's what I'm thinking. Pine might not be the best thing to use because it's got a lot of sap in it, resin, but this should have been dry. It's been out there for more than a year. So anyway, I think what we got going on here is just an issue of things being wet. But I got my posts up here. I've done all the heavy lifting, all the hard part. I'm gonna let this stuff dry out, come up here. This is my property, so I might be bringing up a little bit of that twine, like brown colored twine, like they used to tie packages up with in the old days. I have some of that from hay bales, hay twine, that works. Might tie those together so it stops slipping, but I would not do that out there on someone else's property if they've given me permission to hike on their property, or if I'm in trails on national forest or state parks or whatever. Listen, take nothing but memories, leave nothing but footprints, okay? Something I live by when I'm out in nature. So I'm not saying avoid the sun. The sun's a beautiful thing, but you might want to think about limiting your exposure, as I'm going to be doing going forward. We all do age. We want to make sure we're taking good care of ourselves. So thank you for joining me for another video from here at Homesteading Off the Grid. Make sure to tune back for more next time. This place is weird.